There is a moment that quietly shapes the way many people see themselves. You share an idea. Maybe it is something simple. A thought during a conversation, a comment in a group, a message online. After you say it, something inside your mind waits. You wait for a reaction, a nod, a smile, a response, a sign that someone agrees with you. That moment of waiting often happens so quickly that people barely notice it. But psychologically, it reveals something important. Many people are not only sharing ideas, they are searching for validation. Validation is the feeling that someone else confirms your thoughts, your actions, or even your identity. It is the moment when another person says, in one way or another, you are right, you are good, you matter. And for many people, this feeling carries enormous emotional weight. But the question is why? Why do humans care so deeply about validation? Why does approval from others feel so powerful? To answer that question, we must return once again to the environments that shaped the human brain. Long before modern society existed, humans survived by living in tightly connected groups. Inside those groups, cooperation was essential. People depended on each other for food, protection, and knowledge. Trust was not optional. It was necessary. Because of this, individuals constantly evaluated one another. Who could be trusted? Who contributed to the group? Who followed the shared norms of the tribe? If someone behaved in ways that others approved of, they were accepted. But if someone behaved in ways that threatened the group, they risked rejection. And rejection inside a small tribe carried serious consequences. Losing the trust of others could mean losing protection, losing shared resources, losing social support. For ancient humans, rejection was not just emotionally painful. It could be life-threatening. Because of this, the human brain developed powerful mechanisms to monitor social approval. People became highly sensitive to the reactions of others. A smile could signal acceptance. A frown could signal disapproval. A nod could signal agreement. And silence could create uncertainty. Over time, these signals became deeply connected to emotional responses. Approval created relief. Disapproval created anxiety. Validation became a signal that a person was aligned with the group, and alignment meant safety. Even today, the same ancient systems continue to operate inside the human mind. When someone agrees with us, it feels reassuring. When someone praises our actions, it feels rewarding. When someone criticizes us, it can feel threatening. This is why people often seek validation, even in situations where survival is not at risk. The brain still treats approval as a signal of belonging. But validation does not only influence behavior inside tribes, it also shapes identity. From childhood, humans learn who they are through the reactions of others. A child shows a drawing to a parent. The parent smiles. The child learns that their effort is appreciated. A student answers a question in class. The teacher praises them. The student learns that their thinking is valued. These small moments slowly build a sense of identity. They teach individuals what behaviors are accepted, what abilities are admired, what qualities are rewarded. But over time, something subtle can happen. Instead of simply appreciating validation, people may begin depending on it. They may begin measuring their value based on the reactions of others. Am I successful? Am I interesting? Am I attractive? Am I intelligent? Instead of answering these questions internally, they look outward. They search for signals, praise, recognition, approval. And when those signals appear, confidence increases. But when those signals disappear, doubt appears. This creates a fragile psychological system because external validation is unpredictable. Sometimes people will admire you. Sometimes they will ignore you. Sometimes they will criticize you. If self-worth depends entirely on these reactions, emotional stability becomes difficult. A person may feel confident one day and insecure the next, not because they changed, but because the reactions around them changed. Understanding this dynamic reveals something important. The human search for validation is not simply about ego, it is about belonging. Deep inside the mind, validation still carries the meaning it had thousands of years ago. It signals acceptance, it signals safety, and it reassures the brain that a person still belongs to the group. There is another layer to validation that most people rarely recognize. Validation is not only about belonging, it is also about certainty. Human beings dislike uncertainty about themselves. We want to know where we stand. We want to know whether we are respected, admired, or valued by others. Without clear signals, the mind begins to question itself. Am I doing the right thing? Do people respect me? Do I matter here? Validation answers these questions quickly. A compliment can remove doubt in seconds. A simple "good job" can calm the mind. A message of support can restore confidence. But the opposite is also true. The absence of validation can create anxiety. When people feel ignored or unrecognized, their minds begin searching for explanations. Maybe they did something wrong. Maybe others do not value them. Maybe they are not good enough. This process often happens automatically. The brain tries to interpret social signals in order to understand its position inside a group, and when signals are unclear, uncertainty grows. This is one reason many people feel uncomfortable when their ideas receive no response. Silence can feel more stressful than criticism. Criticism at least provides information. Silence leaves the mind guessing, and the human brain dislikes guessing when it comes to social belonging. This sensitivity to social feedback explains why validation plays such a strong role in modern life. In workplaces, employees look for recognition from supervisors. In friendships, people look for signs of appreciation. In relationships, individuals look for reassurance that they are valued. Validation becomes a form of emotional feedback. It tells people whether their actions are accepted by others. But in the modern world, the search for validation has expanded far beyond close social groups. Technology has changed the scale of social feedback. In the past, most validation came from a small circle of people: family members, friends, members of a tribe or community. Today, validation can come from thousands of strangers. Social media platforms have transformed validation into measurable signals. Likes, comments, shares, followers. Each number represents a small form of approval. Someone saw your message. Someone reacted. Someone acknowledged your presence. And every time this happens, the brain responds. Just like attention, validation activates reward systems inside the brain. Each notification becomes a small signal of recognition, and over time, these signals can become habit-forming. People begin checking their phones frequently. They wait for responses. They monitor reactions, not always because they want attention, but because they want confirmation. Confirmation that they are being seen. Confirmation that their voice matters. But there is a hidden danger in relying too heavily on external validation. Because validation from others is unpredictable. People's opinions change. Trends shift. Attention moves from one topic to another. What receives praise today may be ignored tomorrow. If someone's self-worth depends entirely on these signals, emotional stability becomes fragile. Confidence rises when validation appears. Confidence falls when validation disappears. This creates a psychological roller coaster. Some days a person may feel admired. Other days they may feel invisible. Yet nothing about the person themselves has truly changed. Only the reactions around them have changed. This is why many people experience anxiety when they rely too heavily on external approval. Their emotional state becomes tied to reactions they cannot control. Understanding this dynamic reveals something important about human psychology. The search for validation is not simply a sign of weakness. It is a reflection of an ancient survival system operating in a modern environment. The brain evolved to care deeply about approval from small social groups. But modern technology exposes that same brain to approval from massive audiences. The system was never designed for this scale. And because of that, People can easily become overwhelmed by the constant stream of social feedback. Learning to recognize this pattern is the first step toward understanding how validation shapes behavior. But there is still one deeper question left to explore. If validation from others is so powerful, is it possible to build confidence without depending entirely on it? The answer to that question leads us to a different psychological concept: self-validation. Self-validation is the ability to recognize your own value without relying entirely on the reactions of others. For many people, this idea feels unfamiliar. From childhood, humans learn to look outward for signals that tell them whether they are doing well. A child shows a drawing to a parent and waits for a reaction. A student answers a question and waits for the teacher's response. An employee completes a task and waits to see if their work will be acknowledged. These responses help individuals understand whether their actions are acceptable. They help shape identity. They help people learn what behaviors are rewarded and which ones are not. But over time, something subtle can happen. Instead of appreciating validation, people may begin depending on it. Instead of seeing approval as encouragement, they begin treating it as proof of their value. When approval appears, they feel confident. When approval disappears, they begin to doubt themselves. This creates a fragile psychological structure because the opinions of others are always changing. People's moods change, circumstances change, social environments change. If someone builds their sense of worth entirely on external reactions, they place their emotional stability in the hands of forces they cannot control. One day they may feel admired. The next day they may feel invisible, not because they themselves have changed, but because the reactions around them have changed. Self-validation offers a different foundation. Instead of constantly asking the outside world for confirmation, a person begins learning to evaluate themselves internally. They ask different questions. Did I act according to my values? Did I make an honest effort? Did I speak truthfully? These questions do not depend on applause. They depend on personal integrity. This does not mean ignoring feedback from others. Feedback can still be useful. Criticism can help people improve. Praise can still feel encouraging. But feedback becomes information rather than identity. It becomes something to consider rather than something that defines self-worth. People who develop strong self-validation often appear calmer in social situations. They do not constantly adjust themselves to attract approval. They speak honestly, even when others disagree. They create ideas without waiting for permission. This stability changes how others perceive them. Confidence that does not depend on constant validation often appears more authentic, and authenticity naturally attracts curiosity. Ironically, individuals who no longer chase validation often receive more respect, not because they are trying to impress others, but because they appear comfortable with who they are. This creates an interesting paradox in human behavior. The more desperately someone seeks approval, the more uncertain their behavior may appear. But when someone stops depending on validation, they often project a sense of confidence that others notice immediately. This does not mean they no longer care about relationships. Humans will always value connection. We will always appreciate recognition. But the difference lies in dependence. Attention becomes a bonus rather than a necessity. Approval becomes pleasant rather than essential. When people reach this stage of psychological independence, their relationship with validation changes. They may still receive praise. They may still experience criticism, but their internal sense of worth remains steady. And this stability can have a powerful effect on mental well-being. Instead of constantly scanning the environment for signals of approval, the mind becomes quieter. Instead of measuring every reaction, people begin focusing on what truly matters to them: their values, their work, their relationships. In this state, validation from others becomes something different. It becomes a moment of appreciation rather than a measurement of worth. And that shift can transform how a person experiences social life. Because once the fear of not being enough begins to fade, people are free to express themselves more honestly. They are free to pursue goals that matter to them, rather than goals designed only to impress others. They are free to build connections based on authenticity rather than performance. And when authenticity replaces the constant search for validation, something interesting happens. Relationships become deeper, conversations become more honest, and self-confidence becomes more stable. In the end, the human search for validation is deeply rooted in our evolutionary history. For thousands of years, approval from others helped humans survive inside small social groups. It signaled belonging, it signaled safety, it signaled acceptance. Today, the world has changed dramatically. The number of people who can judge or react to us has expanded far beyond what our ancestors experienced. Yet the psychological systems inside the brain remain largely the same. We still react strongly to approval. We still feel uncomfortable when we believe we are being rejected. But understanding these mechanisms allows people to see them more clearly. Instead of being controlled by the search for validation, individuals can begin to observe it. They notice when they feel the urge to seek approval. They recognize when their mood shifts based on the reactions of others. And that awareness creates freedom. Because once a person understands the psychology behind validation, they can choose how much power it has over them. They can still value relationships. They can still appreciate recognition, but they no longer need constant confirmation in order to believe they are enough. And perhaps that is the most important realization of all. Validation can feel powerful, but self-worth does not need to come from outside. Sometimes the strongest form of validation is the quiet knowledge that you are living according to your own values. And that knowledge does not depend on applause. It simply depends on honesty with yourself.